Time is 9 o'clock. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, need approval of the agenda. We have one item to add. Okay, a gambling permit request from Sheldon Valley Sportsmen's Association. That'll be in discussion items, item number 3. Is there anything else? And I have approval of the agenda with the amendment.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It is approved. Minutes.
I'll
Everyone
make
had
a
chance
motion to
look?
approve the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. That is approved. At this time, the public is welcome to address the county board on any matter of county concern. When invited, please speak. And when invited to speak, please state your name, address, and topic you are addressing. Members of the public may speak respectfully for up to 2 minutes. The public comment period is limited to a total of 15 minutes. County board members may ask or answer questions of the speaker, but issues shall not be debated during the public comment period. At the board's discretion, the board may agree to schedule matters addressed during the public comment period on the current board agenda or on a future board agenda. All discussions must be civil in nature and must be directed at the board, not at other members of the public. Any discussions regarding employee or department performance are not allowed and should be taken up with the Human Resources Department or appropriate department head. Does anyone wish to address the board?
Fred Arnold, 15283 State 44. I get kind of nervous in these kinds of situations, and so I handed a copy of what I have to say. Shar handed it out to all of you.
Okay, very good.
Approximately 3 weeks ago, I was a member of a 4-person committee that met with Chairman Schultz and the county engineer for approximately 2.5 hours to talk about the various options for the county shop project. The other members of this group were Dennis Gavin, Chuck Schulte, and Matt Kluge. The 4 of us were unanimous in saying that the shop and office area did not need to be nearly as large as proposed, and it certainly did not need to be located on a 22-acre tract of very valuable land that could be possibly much better used for residential development. The county representatives were at first quite resistant to these ideas, but in the ensuing discussion, they seemed to be modifying their positions somewhat. At the conclusion of the meeting, Mr. Schultz volunteered to speak with some individuals about arrangements for a different site, and we tentatively set a meeting for Tuesday, 12 days later, with Mr. Schultz being responsible for notifying us. We have yet to hear from him. We understand that since that time, the county board has voted to proceed with the original plans on the 22-acre site, and we are unable to discover any attempt during the board meeting that Mr. Schultz has informed the board of our discussion, or the details of our discussion should be in there, or that he told us that our work was not completed. We just simply haven't heard. One of the primary reasons for wanting such a large shop seems to be the pressure of getting broken equipment fixed in a timely manner if more than one machine is broken down at a particular time. All 3 of the local businessmen deal with that situation on an almost daily basis, and they are saying that the proposed number of service bays is simply overbuilding. Can you imagine the reaction of a farmer if Mr. Kluge or Mr. Schulte informed him that they couldn't work on his baler or combine for 3 days because their shop was fully equipped and waiting for parts. Please imagine the reaction of one of Mr. Gavin's customers if they were told that they would have to dump a few thousand gallons of milk down the drain because he couldn't get a truck to them for a couple of days because his shop was full. My point is that these gentlemen know what it takes to get the job done, and they have obviously been doing it successfully for many years. I feel very badly that the county board has chosen to be somewhat disrespectful and rude to these people. Thank you for your time this morning.
Fred, I am still pursuing, looking at other parcels, and I'll talk to you more about it later, if that's possible.
Later today or
Today would be fine.
this afternoon?
Depends on how things go here.
Pardon?
I'll call you.
Yeah.
I'll call you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Are you going to stick around, Fred, for the rest of the meeting?
Pardon
You
me?
going to be around for the rest of the meeting?
David and I look at each other and laugh because he knows that I'm supposed to be golfing in 15 minutes.
Oh, no.
No.
Dedication has its limits, Justin.
True. Thank you, Fred. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Fred.
I'm Wayne Feldmeyer from Yucatan Township. Address is 5954 Rock Road, Houston. Basically, I watch you guys on the internet, and you guys are catching a lot of flack here. But to tell you the truth, I really think you're doing a pretty good job. You know, if you look back on the history of this, when they first just started discussing the jail, that started out at $8 million. And you know what? It doubled. Because everybody, all they did is sit there and talk about it. If you're going to go ahead with this county shop, I just suggest go ahead, get it done. The cost is going to be what the cost is, but you know what? Over in Yucatan, when we put a shop in that where the men could work on, and it made it so much better, and our equipment lasted so much longer over there, I got to admit it was the best thing we ever did. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Deb Ray, and I live between Caledonia Heights and near Camp Winnebago. And I'm here to address the board on behalf of the historic jail. My first concern is the deadline that you've set of December 31st to make a final decision, and I hope you'll consider extending that deadline. Any plans for misuse or for reuse will take a lot of time and planning and can't be done in the next few months. The jail building is in good shape, and letting it stand until a reuse can be found will not impact the condition of the building. And the cost of heating in the winter is minimal, and you have funds to cover it from the insurance company. The National Register of Historic Buildings designation has a lot of advantages for funding sources that you would not have with another building. So this is critical for this finding a reuse for the jail. Delisting from the National Register would have a negative impact on hopes for funding projects at the courthouse because, as you know, their two buildings are linked in the same designation. The process to relist the courthouse alone is not an easy task. It takes a lot of time and money to do that. There were about 140 people on the Historic Caledonia tours of June 20th, and there were many ideas for reuse talked about that day, including a bed and breakfast, a museum, youth hostel for bikers, restaurant, microbrewery, children's museum downstairs with a turkey room, barn quilt room, information room, and bed and breakfast upstairs. Veterans Museum to tie in with the Veterans Memorial on these grounds. A Driftless Area Interpretive Center. And one I heard as I walked in today, a person talked about a tech school satellite. And then finally an incubator for small businesses with meeting rooms and spaces to use by artists and a small kitchen for short-term catering use. These are ideas that your constituents have come up with for the building. Many of these ideas have merit, and the added draw would be the unique jail building and its history. The jail was built from local stone quarried 1 mile east of Caledonia, so the Driftless Area Interpretive Center idea is intriguing. The Emmy-winning PBS film Mysteries of the Driftless, worked on, produced by George Howe of La Crescent, has sparked an interest in this topic. Imagine educational displays, educational field trip opportunities for area schools, geology classes, water quality education, unique fauna and wildlife information. Who knows, maybe this center would spark an interest in one of our students from Houston County to pursue a career in geology. Visitors could be directed to the trails at Beaver State Park, the bike trails at Houston, the apple orchard drives around La Crescent, and the Mississippi River vistas at Brownsville, all of which highlight the wonders of the Driftless area. If this reuse, whatever it is, would become a destination, just think of the traffic you would have coming through our county. To get to this place, you have to drive through Money Creek, Houston, La Crescent, Hoka, Brownsville, Eitzen, and Spring Grove. I hope you will consider this unique building as an opportunity to do something positive for the county. It will take a lot of work and planning, but in the end will be worth it. There are resources out there to help us. Let's put our heads together and do something great with our historic jail. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Deb.
Brian Van Gorp, Yucatan Township. Each week you open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. As you know, the last few words of the pledge are, "and justice for all." Then we are given 120 seconds to ask to address issues of injustice, mostly regarding planning and zoning. Then you ignore us, or systematically deny us justice week after week. If the hypocrisy of this is not obvious to you, it is to everyone else. We have proven and documented how we have been denied justice regarding the Erickson permit and the non-conforming mining issues. You refuse to accept accountability for enforcing your own ordinances and state statutes. Your investigation of the recent ethics complaint regarding planning and zoning was shameful. You ask the accused if they are guilty, and when they say no, you close the investigation. Seriously. This is equivalent to being pulled over while driving drunk, and when asked if you're okay to drive, you say yep, and being allowed to continue on down the road. Reciting the words "and justice for all" may make you feel good, but your behavior says you are not at all interested in justice. Talk is cheap. Behavior shows a person's real intent. Your failure to adequately investigate these ethics complaints is an insult to all the citizens of this county. Many problems are very complex. Houston County finds itself in a complex problem now because of years of lack of enforcement. But the solution is very simple. Start holding planning and zoning accountable for your own ordinances. It's just that simple, and all the problems will go away. Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. Ken Jumper from La Crescent Township. I think the Zoning Department and Planning Commission in the county is wrong and in violation of the zoning ordinance in bringing forth yet again this proposed ordinance to allow unlimited frac sand mining in Houston County. The current ordinance states clearly that when an amendment does not pass, it cannot be brought up again for a year. In my opinion, this proposal is a Trojan horse to again mislead and deceive the public. What starts out as a small frac sand mines will, under the pro-frac sand mining bias of a majority of the present Planning Commission, eventually be gradually expanded to allow it to go in whatever direction the miners want. This is called incrementalism, and the late Charlie Weiser perfected this approach in La Crescent Township. The issue of non-conforming mines was addressed in the 2009 update of the county zoning ordinance. It allows 5 years until December 2014, which just came and went, for these registered mines to come into conformance or to be taken off the books. So why wasn't this done? state statutes and the non-conforming sections of the current ordinance clearly explains all of this. And frankly, unfortunately, County Attorney Yount is not here today. I don't understand how he comes up with some of the interpretations that he has presented in the last several months. Certainly not by reading the state statutes or the case law. If you wonder why those of us who come here so often to demand improvements in the mining section of the zoning ordinance are angry, it's because we have seen it's because of what we see as blatant, intentional misinterpretation of the ordinance, again and again and again, which you, Commissioner Schultz, Commissioner Storley, and Commissioner Walter always seem to make excuses for and to sanction.
Does anyone else wish to address the board?
Time's up.
We will proceed with our meeting then.
2 more minutes.
I'll give you 2.
Bruce Chemical, Caledonia, Minnesota. The rumored compromise revised draft of the ordinance that's coming before the planning and zoning hearing next Tuesday, I believe, is suspect. And the reason that it's suspect is that, number one, it is not a compromise. Only one side of the issue is being asked to relent. The other side is not offering anything in exchange. They're actually heaping more paper onto the county. And the paper is this. The paper is a cover-up. And the paper says that the new draft ordinance, if passed, would allow the zoning department another 2 years to do what it had 13 years in the past to complete, which is to bring all mines into compliance with the current Section 27. Section 27 is actually very, very good. You just haven't read it.
Okay, we'll proceed with our meeting. Sam.
Good morning, Commissioners. In the packet before you, there should be proposed changes to the Economic Development Authority bylaws. And I just wanted to kind of bring those to attention to you today. So the language that's presented here, what's highlighted in blue would be deleted, and then what would be highlighted in yellow would be the additions. And this kind of came out of a discussion where at the end of last year we were facing some terms that were expiring, and we're having difficulty filling them. We asked for special legislation to reduce the terms from 6 years to 3 years, and that did pass. So we are able to do that, and that was what kind of prompted the review of the bylaws. And then going through it, just kind of cleaning some language up here is what these changes are. It does say in here that the board is consisting of 7 members. And I believe we're actually consisting of 9 members. We have 7 members, and then the 2 from the commissioners' board sit on our EDA as well. And so I guess that would be clarified would have to be clarified in another draft. But, are there any questions from the commissioners on the proposed changes?
No, I read through it and it all makes sense.
Just a cleanup.
Clean up of the.
Yep. So then the next process would be to hold a public hearing, which I think we have scheduled as August 4th, which is I think it's the first Tuesday of August, and that would be in just a couple weeks. So that's our next step.
Sounds good.
So,
Sounds good to
me.
All right.
Motion
Sure.
to adopt?
Be good. Well, motion to set the public hearing.
Okay.
I'll make,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for August 4th for the changes in bylaws for the EDA.
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much.
And Tess.
Good morning, Commissioners and everyone. We have a brief agenda this morning. We have a successful completion to our search for a replacement for a maintenance specialist. And at this time, the Highway Department DOT engineer and myself are recommending the hire of Charles Ingram as probationary maintenance specialist effective July 27th. That would be conditioned upon successful completion of the background check, and it would be at a step one starting wage of $18.51 under the current contract. So we're looking at a motion. We're asking your consideration for a motion to hire.
Motion to hire for the highway department.
I'll second it.
Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. That is carried.
Did you want to comment on his background or anything? I should have asked you that. He comes with considerable experience in the private sector and a lot of heavy equipment and all the areas that you, pretty much all the areas that you need. So we're fortunate. Oh, thanks.
The other thing I just handed out there sorry that got passed around, that's just the 2014 annual report from the highway department. So you guys can review that in your leisure time.
I'm not the vice chair, Dana is. On the front, it says vice chair. I'm not. Dana's the vice chair.
Just a correction on the front cover for wording.
Mhm. Thank you.
We have auction quotes?
2014.
Table closed until 9.
9:30? Okay, let's move around. Do we have anyone else here that we can move to?
Tim Penny.
Tim Penny? Oh, there he is. Okay, sorry.
I do have a packet that I
Hey, Tim.
if that's all right. How are you this morning?
Thank you.
Good morning, Tim.
Everyone, good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can share one.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for rescheduling. I think we were supposed to be here last week, but we're trying to cover Fillmore County and Houston County in the same morning. And by the time my assistant Jennifer got here, you were adjourned. So thank you for scheduling again today so that I could come back and have a short visit. I want to start by thanking Houston County for their support for the Initiative Foundation. We received support from all 20 counties in the Initiative Foundation region, along with a number of cities. We also received support from corporations and banks and individuals within the region, and that local support comprises about 10% of our annual budget. So it may seem that that isn't a lot, but it's critically important. We are a 501c3 nonprofit foundation, and having local support is key to keeping that nonprofit status. But it also helps us leverage and draw in lots of other dollars to this region to show that we have that local support and that local partnership. So I want to start by thanking you for the ongoing support from the county. We are a roughly $5 million organization annually. We expend those dollars in 3 key areas. I'll talk mostly about early childhood since that's the realm where we have been the most active here in Houston County. But we also do some entrepreneurial investments, and we also manage community funds for smaller towns across this 20-county region. We currently have 23 small town community funds under our umbrella, a number of them not too far away, Rushford and Preston and Spring Valley, and trying to think, Harmony. So we've got quite a few nearby. We'd like to have some here in Houston County. So as we move forward, we'll see if there's some expressed interest on the part of smaller towns in this county. to create community funds, and that's the third area of our work, and one that we believe is critically important to the ability for towns to invest in their own future. In terms of early childhood investments, we do that in a variety of ways, but in Houston County alone in the last year or so, we did provide a loan to Amanda's Daycare in Hoka to improve their facility and to provide daycare services in that community. IBM Young Explorer computers were awarded the Spring Grove Library. Those are good learning tools for early childhood purposes. We also provided financial support to the Houston County Early Childhood Initiative to help them expand and improve their work. And we did quality child care provider trainings here in the county during the past year. The state of Minnesota provides scholarships for low-income families to get them into quality child care programs, but you have to be rated. And in order to get rated, you have to go through training, and we are now providing that training and have done so here in the county. I think we had 40 or 50 participants in the training that was done right here in Caledonia. We also have 1.5 AmeriCorps positions that are assigned to facilities here in your region, 20 across the entire 20-county region, but 1.5 in this area. They become essentially teacher aides to help in preschool classrooms to get these kids on track for kindergarten. Two things that I want to mention quickly. One is that on behalf of the community funds that we manage, we now are able as a foundation to help them acquire and manage farmland as a donation. The farmland would be, our intent would be that if it's donated, it would still be rented and kept in agricultural production, and that the annual proceeds would be used to support the work of those local community funds. Taxes would still be paid on this land. It's not going to come off the tax rolls, but we now have the legal and other management arrangements established so that we can, on behalf of our community funds, accept farmland as a donation and then use the proceeds from the rent off that land to support community work and community projects. So that's a program that we're only announcing this year, but we hope that over time there will be some expressed interest and some donations will come forward. The second thing I want to mention, because I think it's an area of commercial growth in your county, is the Feast Festival that we will be co-hosting for a second year in Rochester. Last year we had 120 local foods producers and processors come and exhibit at this festival. We had 50 buyers come and sample the stuff, and a lot of contracts resulted from that. So that creates a greater economic opportunity for these local foods producers. And we had 1,200 visitors come through and sample these local foods and learn more about some of the local foods producers in our region. We're going to keep doing this. We've got co-sponsorship with the Mayo Foundation and the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. We think it's going to become a bigger and bigger event for our region every year. And it'll be the first weekend, Friday and Saturday in December, so that's like December 4 and 5 at the Mayo Civic Center. So again, thank you for your partnership with our foundation. And we look forward to additional opportunities to bring some of our resources to your county.
When I was at one of your meetings, there was a lot of talk about the incubator thing where different businesses are in. Is it in Mankato or?
We have supported the creation of 3 or 4 incubators in the region through our grant making. It's, in addition to our programmatic work, we do some grant making every year. We helped create an incubator in Red Wing that is largely percolating documentary film companies. There are 2 or 3 that are already sprouted in that incubator. We helped create an incubator in Northfield that's really a co-working space where you walk in there and you pay a weekly or monthly rent to use the space, but you get you share that space with other entrepreneurs. We've also helped create one in Mankato, and that one is similar, I would guess, to the one in Northfield, where it's kind of co-working space where you don't necessarily need an office of your own, but you can share space in a cubicle with others that are trying to percolate their business. So we've done that in a variety of communities, and so if there's any thought of that,
How do you assess the need for it? I mean,
well,
one of the things that they talked about
We
this
really,
morning
we
was-
really expect the applicants to express both the need and then the structure of the organization as to why they think it could be successful. Because our grant making is a one-time startup grant.
Okay.
And very often our grants aren't big enough to cover the whole cost, but
But they could work in conjunction with another grant to make
yeah,
them-
they could get
Okay.
grants from other sources, and then collectively it's enough to go forward. And in our case, again, it's a one-time grant because we only do about $400,000 worth of grant making every year. We cap them at $20,000, and if we become an ongoing funder for the same project year in and year out, pretty much that
Right.
amount is eaten up.
Yeah.
So we call them incentive grants to really help to initiate a new project or a new activity.
But you guys would be a good resource for someone who's looking at, like, checking into information for the old jail for uses. I mean, I just remember hearing so much, when I went, there were people talking about their businesses that they had
Yeah.
started. It was really interesting.
Yeah. We're actually working with a community farther west over by Fairmont, Tremont, and they have created a nonprofit that's going to be creating a space for 3 or 4 businesses to then rent and use that space.
Okay.
It's a way that they're trying to reestablish some retail
Okay.
for their community because it's a very small town.
Mhm.
And we did provide a grant since it is a nonprofit.
Mhm.
But nonprofits can have profit-making enterprises,
Right,
so
yeah.
that's their model. And we think it might be an interesting model for smaller towns to bring some retail back to their community. So we call ourselves the Initiative Foundation because we're trying to
Mhm.
be supportive of new initiatives that we think can be helpful to the smaller towns here in southern Minnesota.
Okay. It's good information for.
Anyway, so all of our contact information is in the packet I've provided you, and
Okay.
if you have folks that
Do you have
want
an
to steer
extra
our way.
packet that you can share there?
Yeah, I've got a packet I
Okay,
can leave
thank
with
you.
it. I'll do that on my way out.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you on your Houston County investments, Ridgeway Community School is actually Winona County.
Yeah, I know that.
But some
Okay.
of the people are serviced
But we-
live in Houston County.
Yeah, but we
Oh.
have preschool students that come from the northern part of Houston County that
Okay.
attend that facility.
Just curious. Yeah.
I checked into that last year.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Every time I see that listed here, because my assistant Jennifer puts this stuff together, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to explain this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, makes sense, though, because it's right on the edge.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
See ya.
Yeah. Okay, we'll now open auction bids.
First bid is from Sankey Auction and Realty. .89%. Second bid is from Badler Auction Services, 6%. So the low bid would be Zinke. I recommend we accept that.
Motion to accept the bid from Zinke for the auction, county auction.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Okay, we're a little ahead here. Dennis Gardner, not here yet? 10 o'clock, yeah. Look,
Maybe Carol wants to come in early.
yeah,
She's got department heads notified to come in at that time, so we want to wait with that.
okay. And I don't think we're going to do close as well. Doesn't matter, I guess. Correspondence to payroll and correspondence to H. Cook regarding tons delivered to Excel, the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. That's carried. Highway Department. I am still looking at other properties.
I don't understand why.
I was asked to.
Well, I mean, as a board, we've already made decisions about where it's gonna be and how we're moving forward. And I just think time can be used in better ways.
And we should move forward. I mean, we have to.
We
I
have
understand
to.
that.
We've decided to move forward as a board, and I think that that's what we need to do.
We also decided as a board to hold a public hearing, and that got ran over last week.
No, we're gonna have a public information center when we get all the information.
Right, but it was said to do it after the public committee was done. That was what the motion was. That's what passed, and that did not take place.
Well, we don't have enough information to present
But that
at a
wasn't-
hearing yet.
It wasn't a public hearing based on when we get the information. It was when the committees ended. We will hold a public hearing, which you voted for. The question is then why was it railroaded through last week to go and start getting permits when we still haven't had that information?
Because we have to know if we can get the permits before we can move forward anywhere.
So you go and get the permits, then come back and say, is this a good
Well,
location?
we have to find out if we can get the permits and where the site would, where the building would be located on the site. And we don't have that information
But if I
yet.
remember correctly, and I have the notes from last week's meeting, the motion wasn't to see if we can get the permits, the motion was to get the permits and to get the final drawings done. So I guess if...
And to come back to the board.
Right, so why are we putting all that time and effort, and then, I'm just a little bit perplexed that it seems like the three of you keep talking out of both sides of your mouth. You say you want to hold a public
Hey, I
hearing,
don't-
but you did. You said numerous times you want to hold a public
I
hearing. and you
never
care-
said I wanted to hold a public hearing on this.
You didn't? Okay, do you want me, I can go through
Yeah,
the
you
notes.
voted against
I
it.
did.
I voted
Good.
against
I
it,
remember.
didn't I,
Yeah,
Dan?
you did. And you said that you don't know what the cost of the building is. You know, and I know that you really have been a proponent of going forward with this, but, you know, one of the things that irks me is that time and time again, we talk about how it's important to go to the people and to find out what they want. So the question is, why don't you do that? And when we take a vote to do that, you don't honor the vote. You just keep pushing it forward. So the question is, you hold a public information committee that is supposed to give an opinion, that's supposed to help guide you. They met twice, and all of a sudden, votes are being taken, and there's numerous people that thought that they were going to be meeting more and have a little bit more input into the direction the board's going to go. That hasn't happened. So it just really seems like you're telling the public one thing and doing the exact opposite. You're saying, we want your input, we want your input. Just vote on it anyway, it doesn't matter. Well, why? Why is that going on?
I don't feel that we're not taking into consideration the public's input.
You bet you're not. You voted 5 times not to hold a public hearing or public information meeting. That's
I
not.
think you need to make sure that the crowd knows how to behave.
We do get a lot of phone calls, a lot of information. I even got contacted by the Crescent Township about moving forward and having it in Caledonia and supporting us in our choice of location.
But you have gotten a lot of people email you and call you in opposition, correct?
One,
You'd had more than that. Here's the emails that all your names were on, that were affiliated with, and these are all in opposition just over the last week.
And
So
how
you've
many
gotten
was
more
that?
than one.
I got back to every one of them.
Right, but you just said you only had one. Now you're saying
Well,
you
I'm
had more
thinking
than
of the
one?
one that I get daily.
Right. So the
Please,
thing
please
is,
be respectful.
I was at the city council meeting, the Caledonia City Council meeting last night, and a few people were a little bit upset because they felt they were going to get some representation on this public input committee, which they didn't. We had talked a few weeks ago, and even Judy brought it up on the June 23rd meeting, that you felt that we should have input from people not just in Caledonia, but from all over the community and the county. So, and Steve had said he wanted Mike Girardi to be part of it. I guess the question is, why wasn't the city represented? Why wasn't the school represented? If you really cared what they had to say and shaped some of your decisions, why are they not included? So they're not included, they don't get their input, but you've already voted to put it by the school, you voted to go and get permits. I mean, it really feels like you're pushing this forward with disregard to finding out from the public.
We do have to keep moving forward, though. Time is getting.
But why? But what's the deadline? What's the deadline? What is
Cost.
it?
The longer we wait, the more it costs.
And
Sure.
going up higher, we need to make a decision.
So we should just
We have a
run
building.
through without any disregard,
You know
just to
what?
get something in place.
No, that is not it at all. And there's plenty of research being done on this, and there has been for how many years, Justin? So
Right.
I really think that we're correct in moving ahead.
So we're
And
now
it was a
concerned
vote,
about,
Justin,
but
and the
right.
majority ruled, and we should move on.
That's right, and the majority ruled to have a public hearing after the public input committee, but you're running that one over, Judy. Why do you
We
only
will
pay
have
attention to
a-
certain votes?
We will have a public information center when we have enough facts to move forward.
Right.
Well,
The-
we
the
know what we're
concern-
doing. We know we have to build a highway building.
Right.
We know where it's gonna be at, and we just need to keep moving forward. We don't even know if we can get permits yet.
But the
Why
concern,
did the city of Caledonia say no last night, or?
no, they just said that they would like to have a little bit more input and be included. But
They will when a building permit's requested. They will
Oh, I
definitely
understand,
have-
but by then, you're requesting a building permit, which is, you already know where it's gonna be built, you have an
Right.
idea of what it's already gonna entail. So then
Right.
why go to the public and say, we want you to tell us what your thoughts are, even though we've already got permits and we've already decided where it's gonna go? It's kind of a little late for that.
Really don't want to ask, someone else, I guess, to design the facility for us. We've
Right.
got an engineering firm and an architectural firm
Yep.
that is doing that for us.
So then why go to the public if their input's not gonna help design the building? If
I
they're
think
gonna
it's
say,
to
hey,
inform the public, though, to let them know what we're doing and keep moving forward.
so it's
not
more of a public telling, we're just gonna tell you what we're doing.
with questions and answers, so they understand why we did that and what we're doing
So
to
you
move forward.
don't really wanna know whether or not they approve or have suggestions or better ideas. It doesn't matter. We're just gonna do what we want. We're gonna tell you what we want, and your suggestions don't matter.
Once we have something in front of them,
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It's too late by then. You're gonna have something in front of you. You're gonna have
Mhm.
plans and all that. Then what's the point of asking the public for their input? It doesn't matter. You've already got the plans.
it might. It could matter.
But then it's a waste of time if all of a sudden they
Why?
say, hey, we got a better idea. How about this? How about we do it like this? And you go, geez, that's a great idea. We've already spent tens of thousands of dollars getting these plans drawn up and getting these permits. Well, now you just kind of wasted
They don't
money.
get permits until you've got the plans. Literally.
Right, but here's, okay, you're failing to see the point here. When are you gonna go to the public to help find out what they want? You've already voted on having it out by the school, but you haven't
We
asked
have
the
been
school if they
researching
want
it,
it, you
though.
haven't asked the city if that's a good place, you just voted on it. So what if the city and the school come back and say, that's not a good spot, what are you gonna do?
Then we're gonna have to
Move on.
readdress the issue.
Right, but then you've already gotten permits and plans for that location out
They
there.
don't
You
get
can't
permits
get the
See what I'm
until-
saying? You're putting the cart before the horse.
Not until you.
I don't
no.
agree with you,
No.
Justin, and I think that we could go on for hours and
No.
not get
Let's-
anywhere on this. It was voted on, it's moving ahead, and that's.
So
what
when
we're
are we gonna
doing.
have the public hearing that we're supposed to have after the public
After
input
we
committee?
have information what we're doing.
When? Because it was said it was gonna be 60 days, or you guys voted that one down, then we said after the public input committee. Well, the public input committee's done, so when is that gonna take place?
To be determined.
Well, when? You already said there's a deadline for the building, there's obviously a deadline. When would you have that public hearing in this scheme of things, when your deadline is?
Guess when we have plans.
So,
When we've moved on, when we got
next
something.
year, 2 years from now?
No,
Then when?
no.
Justin?
I just want to nail it down, Judy. You said that there's a deadline. Well, I don't know what that deadline is, so when is that deadline, so I can get an idea of when this public hearing is going to take place?
We'll let you know as soon as we
Yeah.
know.
You're going to
okay?
let me know, so
Yeah,
you're calling
we'll
all
let
the
you know.
shots?
No, we're not. We're doing this
Great.
as a board.
Well, then great, as a board, let's
And as a
determine when the
board,
public
when you
hearing
don't
should be.
get your way, you keep bringing things up and bringing things up. We had a vote, we move on. And we
Right,
have
so we
guests
had a
here,
vote.
so I
That's great.
suggest that we
When is
move
the public
on.
hearing, Judy? When
We
is the
haven't
public
set a
hearing?
date yet.
That's what I'm asking right
I
now,
have-
let's set
we
a
have to
date.
We're
find
not
out.
setting a date right
We
now,
can't set a date
Justin.
till we find out
Let's
what.
move on.
So we don't want
other-
to set a
I
date
don't wanna-
until
We have
we
other
already
appointments.
have the building plans, we already have the permits, we already have the location.
Let's move on.
Well, I want to discuss this, Steve. You keep railroading this thing through, and it's getting ridiculous.
Later.
No, not later, now.
I make
This
a
is the
motion
highway
that we
department
move
bill, right
on with
now.
our meeting. Can we
So-
do
There's a
that?
second.
So what is this
Is
thing
there
with
a
Fred
sec-
Arnold? You said you're going to meet and do the parcels. When is that? I mean,
This afternoon,
this afternoon.
if you don't mind.
Okay.
He had questions, and I'm
So
gonna-
it's still
There's a
open for
motion on the
possible-
floor.
Let's move
So it's
on.
still open for possibility of being elsewhere?
Yes.
It is. So
As
the
far as I'm
vote-
concerned, yes.
Okay, so the
It
vote that
may
you
not
took to be at
work
the school
out.
is irrelevant.
Well, it's
Not
relevant.
at this
But you
point.
just said that you're open for other locations.
It
See
may
what
not
I'm saying?
work
You're
out.
contradicting
It
yourself.
may not work out.
But you already voted to
Let's-
put it there.
We can sit here and argue for a long time.
Well, I would
Let's
like
move
answers, and a
on.
lot of people would like answers. You're contradicting yourself, Steve. You said you voted for it, but you said you're still open for other options. And why did you vote on
There's
it?
a motion on the floor
What is it?
that we move on with this meeting. We have guests that are scheduled on times and stuff here, and we need to move ahead.
And our next guest is at 10 o'clock, and it's 9:45.
They have
I would
arrived.
like to get this resolved, because I got a lot of people asking. And when I show up to city council meetings or township meetings, people are asking these questions, and we don't have answers, because it seems kind of secretive.
Let's move it down. We'll finish at commissioner reports and comments.
Okay, so
All
we're just
right.
gonna bull rush this through and not answer questions still.
No, we'll just move it further down the agenda if you don't mind, please.
Sure, we'll come back to it then.
Yes. Dennis Gardner? Yes. And Sarah, is it?
Weimers?
Weimers, okay.
Weimers, yep.
How do you do?
Hi, thank you.
You have some reporting on our historic jail?
No.
Well, our
On our-
understanding was that there were some questions that
Mhm.
you folks have. And, we're going to, speak to the National Register.
Okay.
I guess
Okay.
you want us to ask you questions, correct?
Yeah, that was our understanding, was to
Okay.
come with
So
information.
can you explain to us, like if we're applying for grants for improvements on this structure, and it's a campus that's on the National Registry?
National Register.
And so if we took part of, like, the jail off of this, would that affect the grants that come in for?
It would, yes. The listing is actually a tandem. It's the jail and the courthouse together. And so a property that is substantially altered, in this case, and we're just being hypothetical here, if the jail were removed, we would have to start the delisting process because the property had been substantially altered. The jail it's not like an elf building or a farmstead or something like that. It's a pretty substantial building in Houston County. So from that standpoint, yes, that would affect your grants for the courthouse.
Can you use, is there anything that we,
Can't hear you, Judy.
oh, I'm sorry.
Are the mics on?
I'm sorry, is there a microphone here?
There is a microphone.
Can we turn our mics up at all?
Can you turn it?
Okay, well, I'll try and speak louder. Is there any use that can't be used by the jail and still be on the, is it just the building? It's not what's inside of it that's on the registry? Like, could you use the jail for any purpose?
In fact, many of the properties that are in the National Register are being used for purposes other than what they were originally built for.
Okay.
There's, for example, the Milwaukee Road Depot in downtown Minneapolis, for example. It's an ice rink.
Okay.
It's part of an ice rink. The Union Depot in St. Paul, there's a restaurant in there. There's condominiums in there. So yes, there is flexibility. The nice thing about the National Register is that we understand that these things don't exist in a snow globe. Most of them, the vast majority of them, are being reused, and very often for a purpose other than what they were originally constructed for.
And are there grants available through the Historical Society to help with that?
It's interesting now. If the property's in public ownership, or say it belongs to a nonprofit or an educational institution, the legacy grants are available for those National Register properties. Say, for example, you needed a new HVAC system or something like that, then you could pursue a grant for that. Now, if the property's in private ownership, say again, just hypothetically, say the jail was purchased by a developer, because the jail is part of a National Register listing, that developer, as long as they're using it for an income-producing reason, the jail for an income-producing reason, they can get state tax credits and they can get federal tax credits to rehabilitate that building.
But not grants.
But not grants, no,
Okay.
not for private ownership, because of course the grants are coming out of public dollars.
Okay.
Now, you know, the structure is a jail,
Mhm.
and I don't know how you can repurpose jails so much, but could that all come out and still stay in the register?
You know, you would end up working with our historic architect in the office,
Mhm.
and she frequently has to deal with that sort of thing because, again, you know, these properties cannot always be reused for what they were originally designed, and so
Mhm.
there's got to be some adaptation. And we try to, well, we follow what are called the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, but there's flexibility built into that. So it's not like everything has to stay frozen as it is. The folks just end up working with our historic architect to make this work.
So it's conceivable the jail cells could come out.
It's
and
possible.
be, you know, and then that area repurposed.
It's possible, you know, or perhaps even, you know, maybe a jail cell can be reused as something in particular, you know, as maybe like a community, it's kind of weird, but maybe like a community gathering spot or something, you know, inside the jail. But yes, sir, you know, we understand that these things, again, they're just not frozen in time, and we want to be able to reuse these, and which is why we passed the state tax credit a few years back. It's just to give folks more of an incentive to preserve their history and reuse their history.
And the nice thing about the grants program is, you know, answering questions about, specifically about sort of bricks and mortar that grants can be used, like this county has received, well, I think capital grants, bond grants, maybe to do some exterior repointing work and some roof work. So the legacy grants, either capital or legacy, could be used for that building. But also legacy grants offer, there are a lot of dollars for planning purposes. So adaptive reuse studies, which are done, you know, it's a great way to hire a consultant who has experience, and so it's an outside consultant who will come in and do an adaptive reuse study and talk to businesses, nonprofits, and do a full study utilizing 100% of that grant fund to look at the historic building. You know, and we'll work with a historian to understand sort of the constraints, understand the standards, what sort of adaptive reuses would be appropriate for that type of property, and then get also that information from the community to find out if it would be viable or not. So it puts it all together and gives you sort of an answer to that question.
Part of our problem in our county is, yeah, we're getting echo now.
Too much.
Yeah. Part of the problem in our county now is that this building here needs a lot of, we need help with this building. And then we have that building that's really needy too. But if we're applying for grants, we're competing against each other then, right?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, they're both owned by the same owner. They're owned by Houston County. We have, I'm sure we've had other grants where an owner has more than one historic building, and so that's another sort of step that instead of just focusing on adaptive reuse there, a legacy grant could be used to hire somebody to look at both buildings together, kind of do an assessment, a conditions assessment, and prioritize like a preservation plan for both of them.
We've had something to that effect
I think we've had a
done.
historic structures report, which
right.
I think was just focused on this building. I haven't seen the final product, so I don't know how far that went in recommendations.
I haven't seen it either, so I
sort of
don't know.
1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20-year recommendations. But easily that building could be rolled into that sort of report and preservation plan, and it would give the county, for this collection of buildings, sort of a long-term, how would you approach this? What would be the priority to do for both of these buildings together? I would assume both could be, you could apply for grants for both.
You know, in fact, we have a property in Waseca County. Is it Waseca in southern Minnesota?
Waseca is in southern Minnesota, yes.
There's an apiary, a bee farm, that's going to be listed in the National Register, and that's what they're doing. They're doing a study on all of the pieces that make up that apiary. And so they're just now in the process of applying for that. In fact, I was talking to one of the grant managers about that. And it makes perfect sense to her to, hey, let's look at all of these together.
We did have a study done. We got a grant for 10,000. They had pathfinders from Houston County to do a study on both buildings as far as the structure and everything. That's what we used to go forward applying for the legacy grant, mainly for this building because we need roofs, etc. So we really need to keep both of them, because we had it done for both structures. We need to keep them together till we hear on this legacy grant that we applied for, right?
So it's my understanding the historic structures report was just for this building, but
we had both assessed at the same time.
And so
right?
what is your second grant? You're talking about another?
No, we had the 10,000 grant to do an assessment.
I thought it was just this building, but I could be wrong. We don't work in the grants.
And we just had to pull someone in because that report didn't answer all the questions we needed. So last week, we had someone here further assessing this building with more things.
Okay.
So we could answer all the questions, because that was part of the reason we didn't get the legacy grants, is because our report wasn't complete.
Yeah, there's
So-
certain standards that those reports have to meet.
And I know
are-
that right now, at this point, we are focused on this building, because this houses are the core of our county, and we need it.
But I think what also, if, taking into consideration that building, and I was down here a year ago with my colleague Bob Herskovitz, and we talked, I don't know if it was all the same, familiar. And we walked through the building. There are other options with county governments or other owners who have buildings that they're not quite sure. I mean, Fergus Falls is sort of the biggest example of that, with the big state hospital up there, where it was basically has been mothballed for about 10 years. That is a capital investment that a grant could be used for, to do actual mothballing, to have that building sort of sit and be stabilized, at least on the exterior, and proper ventilation. I mean, some pretty minor things, but there is sort of a package involved in what a building would undertake for that, and then it could sit and be stable and be a small investment to at least give it some time for you to
And
focus attention on
in
this.
that mothballing, if I'm pretty sure I get this, that it has to maintain a certain level of heat in the winter?
That, I believe, minimal. There are some buildings that are actually mothballed and the heat is turned off, just so that it's had ventilation. That would need an assessment by a historical architect or a structural engineer to make sure that, and that's not me, to make sure that that building could withstand sort of that cold, hot change over numerous years. But I worked in historic sites for the state, and we had numerous buildings that would go cold in the winter and warm up in the spring. So that would need an assessment to take that into account, but it's a possibility.
Tess Kruger is here, and she's our person who's been working with the grants. And Tess, was this the last engineers that were here last week? Were they engineers?
Historical architect was here for
Okay,
this structure.
great. And it was for this structure, and this
For this
is,
structure, although I did ask him to do a walkthrough over there, and I'm not, and can probably call and ask that question. Because we don't have insulation, if you will. We don't have wallboard and those things, very much of it anyway, it's at a minimum. So, I would think that it could, temperature-wise, we don't have any water in the pipes there. We have some antifreeze in the third floor sprinkler system, and other than that, the pipes are all clear, so.
Has it been heated since the
Yes, we
accident?
maintained
Yeah.
an approximate temperature of 50 degrees, and keep it ventilated with an exhaust fan in the summer going out.
So that would be a question to ask that engineer or architect.
We just want to assure that we don't have any, don't create an environment that would encourage mold.
Right.
Because we don't
Totally
have
understandable.
to speak of now, so that would be our main concern. Keep the moisture level down. So we may want some level of heat, moisture level down.
Sure.
So I think some of the other questions Shar had asked me over the phone when we set up this meeting. So my position at the State Historic Preservation Office is I manage the compliance office. So I primarily work with federal review projects that go through federal review using federal dollars. But there are state laws that apply to demolition of historic structures. So Chapter 138 of the statutes indicate that federal or state agencies and political subdivisions, of which the county is a definition of a political subdivision of the state, are required to work with our office to protect historic properties, National Register properties, and go through the process of review and consultation before anything takes place, before demolition, before major rehabilitation. So that consultation would take place with our office, similar to the federal review. There also is, the Environmental Quality Board has a category of mandatory EAW, Environmental Assessment Worksheet categories, and demolition in whole or part of a National Register property is a mandatory Environmental Assessment Worksheet. Again, that's not an administrative rule of our organization, and we're written in as a reviewer of those EAWs, but that's an entirely EQB process. So that offers sort of a public venue for demolition of a National Register property, and it doesn't stop projects, but it's a required environmental review. So those are sort of the two regulatory frameworks that would involve potential demolition.
That would be required as part of the process for demolition?
Yep.
Not for reuse?
No.
Well, adaptive reuse, it's a little gray, like some state laws. It does say, it's not as prescriptive as the federal law, which basically says any federal dollar that goes into a National Register or eligible property, we review the rehabilitation, we review demolition. With state law, there aren't regulations that are written with the state law, so it says that state and political subdivisions of the state take into account their projects on National Register properties. With a lot of counties, we do review rehabilitation of their National Register-owned buildings or their county-owned National Register buildings. A lot of counties and cities probably don't comply, but we're not the preservation police, so we rely on them to come to our office. But you know, we're not just a regulatory part of our office. We are, we consider ourselves a resource first and foremost. With Dennis's expertise in National Register, we have historical architects who are a resource and see projects all across the state, adaptive reuse projects, rehabilitation, creative adaptive reuse. We also have staff in our office who work with county historical societies to sort of help foster that interest in reuse of historic properties. We have people who work with main streets and business owners across the state. So even though we have a staff of only 20 people, we have a pretty wide variety of information and resources that we can share in a situation like this.
So if someone was really interested in preserving the jail, could they come to your office and get help with knowing what could be done with it?
Ultimately, yes, but I would imagine that they'd probably have an idea of what they're thinking of initially, how they would like to reuse this. And there they would be, again, talking with our historic architect to kind of get an idea of how feasible this would be. Again, and I'm thinking more of like a private developer kind of thing. If they were like seeking the tax credits, they probably would have an idea as to how they would want to make that building income producing. Whether it's turning it into apartments or a store or whatever.
There's just such a large cost involved in doing anything with the jail like it is now, to go from this to whatever. So you'd have to have a person who had a lot of funding behind them. But what I'm wondering is, what we've decided as a board is that we don't want to put any tax dollars. Our county, none of our county tax dollars are going into that building.
Have you had an opportunity to talk with anyone like in Winona? Because there's a handful of rehabilitation projects in Winona and tax credit projects going on. I know like the Beck Building in downtown is being rehabilitated. You know, I can always, you know, find out, look at our files and see what, you know, tax credit projects that are fairly recent in Winona, and, you know, the folks the developers that are doing those, you know, I mean, not really all that far away from Winona. You know, I can always offer that information, take a look at our files and see what we have.
Okay. But state law also does indicate that publicly owned, public ownership of National Register properties, it's a responsibility to take care of those properties too, so.
That's why we're maintaining it now.
Tess,
We
did you
are
have a
doing
comment
that.
or a question?
I was just to address Commissioner Storley's question about resources to assist folks that may have an interest in pursuing some kind of reuse of that property. Preservation Alliance, the nonprofit organization, has come down on 2 or 3 occasions. They were here during the Founders Day. We have some of their materials yet in our office showing some of the properties around the state that they have been involved in advising folks, whether they're government entities or private parties, and talking about tax credits and all of that. They were, like I said, here for Founders Day. They've been here, I think, working with EDA a couple of different times, and are very willing and anxious to offer their expertise however we would use it. So please know that they've been there in conversation with them.
What are tax credits like, or how about, explain what that's about?
Oh, boy. It's not exactly my bailiwick. It tends to be our historic architect that does those the most. But it's a 20% state tax credit, and that's a 20% federal tax credit. It passed in 2010.
The state did.
The state did,
Federal's
I'm sorry.
been around a long time.
Federal's been around for a while, but...
Income tax?
It's, yes.
On the developer?
Yep, on the developer, yeah.
Okay.
And when it was the 20% tax credit, a lot of times it just wouldn't work. The financing, they couldn't make the financing work. But what we've discovered since that state tax credit was passed, the number of applications has just skyrocketed because now all of a sudden the numbers could work. And we're starting, and we're encouraging, you know, more tax development or more of these rehabilitation projects outside of the cities. Of course, so many are focusing inside the cities in places like Duluth and stuff, and now we're getting them in Winona, and we've had one in Cannon Falls and New Ulm, yeah. So folks are putting the numbers together and discovering that it's much more feasible than it used to be. You're talking about a pretty big offset of taxes.
I believe the building that was just had a fire in downtown Winona, I believe that has a new owner, and they're starting discussion with our office and pursuing tax credit rehabilitation of that pretty severely damaged building. So I think developers are seeing, a lot of developers are also putting together, if they're redevelopment for housing, they're also using low-income housing tax credits or other tax credits and sort of lumping everything together, and they have really talented accountants that work for them to figure that out, real estate attorneys. But there's such a variety of projects, from really big projects like adaptive reuse of Schmidt Brewery to smaller
Even
projects
some
all
small
across the state.
like $5,000 projects.
So the tax credit program, if that were pursued by a developer, I mean, most developers know what that means and how to go through that process, would work pretty specifically with our historical architect. Usually the developer will hire an architect who has experience in this type of work, and will sort of put their ideas together and their funding and pursue that process, which is sort of a step process you go through our office to get approvals of scope of work, and then a final completion, and that's when you get your tax credit. The state actually has a grant in lieu of credit, so the federal is a credit at the very end, but the state, you can do another option with that so the developer can get money ahead of time to go into the project.
Are there a number of jails that have been rehabbed in the state you're aware of?
I think Washington County Courthouse was adaptively reused quite a number of years ago, and I know they have a much smaller jail at the back of their building. I know this
Mhm.
one is pretty substantial amount of square footage in that building.
I'm just curious of cost, any ideas at all of what?
Well, I think that's what's important, with the historical architect going through
Mhm.
the building. I mean, if it's somebody who's, could easily put cost estimates together for that type of work, or even just a couple different scenarios.
Yeah.
With the jail. I know that jail, from what I remember, has sort of this metal infrastructure inserted into the back of the building. It looks like that was added at a later date, and taking that out would open a lot of square footage. But answering that question would need a little bit more information, probably.
Mhm. I just
Right.
see if you had any
But there are
ideas.
there are all sorts of possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does tend to be true that the interior is less significant than the exterior. That doesn't, and I know this building had been altered and then was gutted, or at least mostly, partially, when I was over there last year. So preserving interior features is important, like part of your historic staircase. Even this
Mhm.
building has been altered quite a bit on the interior. If they're there and can be preserved, that's great. If they
Mhm.
can't, to make the building
Yeah, it helps to have
reusable.
some finishes. It does help to have some interior finishes.
Or
and stuff.
floor
And there are
plan.
I can see some embellishments that you'd want to leave in there,
Yeah.
try to retain if you can.
But if there's
But-
nothing and it needs to go, it's a secondary feature. The
Yeah.
exterior becomes the primary.
Yeah, I mean, the exterior is the public face.
Mhm.
That's what folks see. And so that's principle.
Mhm. Any more questions?
So, obviously, the best option, and a lot of people are putting a lot of effort into rehabilitating this, restore it, get some use out of this building. I guess one of the questions that I get asked a lot throughout the community is what happens if nothing comes forward, we can't utilize it, nobody wants to buy it, we can't come up with a good idea to utilize this building, and down the road, it starts deteriorating more. I know it's state statute that we have to maintain it, but we also have a budget we can't go broke doing. At what point, if you get to that crossroad of we can't afford to maintain it, bring it back up, keep it going, what do you do? I mean, can you get it off the historic registry, or what's the?
Well, there's three ways that a building gets removed from the National Register. One is that it gets torn down. Second is that it gets moved.
Yep.
Or third, it gets substantially changed, substantially altered. But we can't, we as the State Historic Preservation Office, we can't tell somebody you cannot tear your building down. We can't say that to Houston County. We don't have the statutory authority to do that. But if it is, I mean, if just hypothetically, if it was torn down, at that point, we would have to start the delisting process. But there's no formal mechanism in place to say, okay, I want to remove my building from the National Register. What do I do? Well, because the National Register doesn't put any constraints on the owner, you just do what you want it to do, and then that would affect it.
So I guess there's been some confusion because there's been a lot of people saying, well, you can't tear it down until it's off the registry, but that's not necessarily
That's
true.
not true.
And then when you talk about like altering, you said if you alter it past the point, if we remove the jail cells and we remove 90% of this building, I mean, at what point are you considered altering it too far?
To some degree, it is a little subjective, but again, the exterior is the public face. Now, that's going to be the heaviest. So that's going to weigh the heaviest on our decision making. For example, the jail is an Italianate style jail.
Right.
If you start removing those characteristics, those character-defining features that make it Italianate,
Gotcha.
well, that's why it's listed.
But I think a lot of it is just that nostalgic, like you said, the look of the outside. Obviously to make it functional, we'd have to remove the jail cells and open the space up.
And there's, like I said, there is flexibility there.
Okay, so we don't have to necessarily worry about that, because I think the whole goal would be to keep that outside structure. It's just a matter of what do you do with the inside to make it useful.
It's a very impressive building. It's
It is
one of
cool.
Houston County's very impressive buildings.
Have you seen, off topic, the book from there?
I have not.
If you get a chance to look, it's very interesting. The very first person ever to be put in there was for horse thievery or something. Anyways, it's really neat if you're into history and got it over there. It's really cool to look at.
Oh, all right. I'll check that out.
Tess?
Yes, Commissioner, I've asked maintenance to set up the display that outside here for you. That Preservation Alliance left with us. It belongs to them, and it's examples of other historic structures around the state that have been reused. And there's a little brief statement on each of them, so they'll put that up, so on your way out you should be able to look at. I believe one of them was a jail from over in Laverne. That was
Oh, yeah, it's a
reused.
gallery now. It's a gallery, an art gallery and a museum.
And a Veterans Museum and Art
Veterans Museum,
Gallery.
yeah.
President's Jail.
Oh.
But one in Laverne is completed, and I think it's featured on this poster session out there. That'll be out there for you.
One other question, if we had somebody come forward and said, hey, we don't necessarily want to buy this, but we want to lease it from the county or something like that, any rehab or monies coming through, does that all have to be initiated from the county, or can a private individual still be, I guess, eligible for monies even if they don't quote own it?
That makes it a little.
Yeah, that makes it a little more thorny.
You could partner. I believe there are, that the county could partner with potentially a private developer or county historical society or preservation alliance perhaps, where because you're the owner, you're going to be you'd be a partner on a grant, but they would probably do most of the work if it's an adaptive reuse study or preservation plan or something.
I know, I haven't heard of that particular scenario, but what I have heard of is sometimes a private owner of a property will, go to like the local historical society, which is a 501c3, and that 501c3 will take the lead on a grant to get a grant on behalf of that private owner.
So more of a pass-through.
Yeah, it's that, I've heard of that. I haven't really heard of your particular scenario.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Do you guys have any questions for him?
Yeah, it's challenging. We understand, but then again, the state did kind of understand that in 2010. That's why they passed that state tax credit too, and that's why they passed the legacy grants as well to give folks a few more options.
And I think that if the county is really interested in looking at adaptive reuse options and doing a full-blown adaptive reuse study, which would be a really great way to show the community and involve everybody from the community in our office and the Preservation Alliance perhaps too, is to apply for a legacy grant to do that. It doesn't require match. They'll be starting up a new grant cycle now. They've started a new state fiscal year, so that would at least you'd go through the exercise of doing an adaptive reuse study for this historic building. And then, if it came down to there is no use, there's no possibility that any of these would be feasible, you would at least have that answer pretty clearly.
So if we go through an adaptive reuse study, what are the specifics we're going to find out?
I didn't bring any examples with me. I know that's kind of a constant, and that's a program that we've been doing for a long time. We just haven't had money to do it now, but now communities can apply for these legacy grants. It will, like I said, it basically will take the building as the center of attention. So it will include everything from like what Tess recently had done, where it's an actual physical assessment of the building. And so it's usually a team effort, so you have probably a lead consultant, a historical architect, or whatever report she has, to take into consideration sort of the physical constraints of the building, the historic significance of the building, would potentially answer a few questions on flexibility on the interior, what is possible with the jail cells, and then it would so it would create sort of a picture of what kind of building do we have and what square footage, sort of the basic information.
So more or less just.
And then it would take it out to the community, and you usually have community meetings or pretty focused groups that would come together, even design charrettes, where specific questions, it's a conversation that's pretty directed and well formatted, where certain questions are asked from the business community, nonprofit, education, county government, city government, and sort of getting information from all of those community groups to figure out what would be the highest and best use. And so it would give you a report that would give you those different scenarios. If it were to be used as a hotel, this is what it would take. If it were to be used as a multi-use, maybe a nonprofit, maybe some for-profit, mixed use, this is what that would look like. So it would probably come up with a few recommendations on the highest and best use for the community, but it takes all of that into account.
Barb?
As Judy and Dana know, we've talked about sending out RFPs on the CBA, but it sounds like without a use study, we don't have any material to send an RFP out.
And if we're applying for legacy grants to do that, can we at the same time apply for legacy grants for this building, and will it affect what's happening in this building by pursuing in that building?
Not typically, because it's, so you, for this building, the idea is that you would pursue some bricks and mortar, some repair grants, or is it more planning documents?
We'll be submitting a pre-app.
For the big,
this one, for
large,
a large-scale grant.
for physical investment into the structure.
Physical investment.
So that's a different grant category than adaptive reuse would probably fall under the small grant, I would think.
Might I
Go ahead.
ask, Commissioner Schulte, might I ask a question?
Please.
What is the maximum on the small grant? You're talking
It's
10,000.
10,000.
Is there an intermediate grant? Because some of these studies can
I
run
know.
$30,000.
And I don't know what the going rate is for adaptive reuse studies, but we could find out from our grants office what some,
That is something.
what some comparable.
Certainly $10,000 is a nice chunk of money.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, it's
30,000 would be a nice.
And, I don't know, because our grants, obviously you submit a grant, it goes through the grants review committee. I've known other historical societies or other governments that have applied for numerous at a time. I don't think it would be a detriment, but.
Would it help if when we applied for the grant as a county, that we had like the County Historical Society as a
I would think that would reinforce it.
Mhm.
I think that would reinforce it.
and then maybe they would look at more money if we had more people working together that were concerned enough that they wanted the building preserved, and to find out what we could do with it.
Right, because even though match is not required, they look favorably upon match. So, and match can be in-kind match. So if you partner with the Historical Society and they're providing staff time and resources and research and that kind of work, then that's a possibility, yeah.
Are there by any chance developers that are looking for prospects like this?
There always
send them
are.
our way.
Yeah, that's why if, I'll take a look and, see what's going on in Winona.
Okay.
And, if there's somebody I can contact here, I can send that info their way.
Winona has a very strong Main Street program, so that's another national trust program. We have a Main Street coordinator who works with the community quite a bit down there, and the Preservation Alliance does. And we can ask them if they know of, in their discussions with Main Street, Winona, any developers waiting over there, just looking for a new project, we can find out for you.
Yeah, and, again, just off the top of my head, I know they're doing the Beck Building in downtown. They might be doing the Laird Norton Building too. That's a couple right there, but there's more than that.
Does the developer typically take ownership of the structure then?
Mhm.
They do.
Because it has to, in order to get the tax credits, it has to be
Mhm.
that income producing private property.
Okay.
It's got to be, tax producing basically, so.
Tax depreciable.
Yeah. Oh, I see, right. Yep.
Lots of stuff to think about.
Yeah.
I know, it's a lot to think about.
I guess I got a question for the board, in which preserving buildings and doing things like that's not necessarily part of our daily business or our wheelhouse or expertise. I guess my question is, would the board want to see if the Historical Society would like to take the lead role on this and do the legwork and research and get the grants going, since we have some other focuses that's
Yeah.
kind of their specialty,
Well,
not
and I
necessarily
think though
ours.
that we can team with the EDA
Mhm.
with this, you know, so that it's not just handing it and asking the historical society, yes.
Yeah, yes.
And my only concern with that is that we are all volunteers, and
Mhm.
we're very limited in their personnel.
Mhm.
And we have many hours to put for a large project like this. We would
Right.
certainly be willing to help, but for us to take the lead and do the majority of it, it would be hard to find that personnel to do it.
Well, I think when we're kind of in that same scenario, we're already stretched thin enough, just trying to keep the government running to focus a lot of attention to this, we're gonna fall short as well. So, you know, we're both in the same boat here.
How about the city? Would the city be able to?
Well, it's
Could be.
a county building, and I think
Mhm.
we're use it for the whole county.
Well, and I think you got a good point, though. I mean, it's gonna benefit the city as well by being here.
Yeah,
I don't
being,
know.
I mean, a local government, I mean, they can take the lead on the application.
Or the EDA, I know
Or
you
the
mentioned the
EDA,
EDA.
And,
We-
and maybe it's, you know, I hate committing things to death by all means. We all get stretched thin on committees, but maybe you got a good point. Maybe it's something that, you know, you put together a few people from the Historic Society, a few people from the city, a few people from the EDA, and meet, and they just take the lead and get the grant money, get the, whatever it is, do the studies, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just worried that if it's all on the board to do, it's just not gonna get done, and it's just gonna get dragged out because we've got other things to do, you know, and obviously the Historical Society wouldn't be able to focus on it either. You know, that's my concern is, how do you keep the ball rolling on this where it doesn't just get dropped off and forgotten, and pretty soon it's deteriorated past the point of use, and now what do you do?
And the Laverne example might be a good one to see how, because that is a county, that jail is actually attached to the county courthouse in Laverne.
Oh, sure.
And maybe just, you know, someone from the county just chatting with the Rock County people to find out how did they do that, because I think they sort of turned over the property and it was rehabilitated. My husband's from there, so I watched this project happen, and I couldn't even remember it when I was here. And worked with the nonprofit, the Vets Museum and the Brandenburg Gallery to get that going. So I think it even constitutes a for-profit and nonprofit mixed use in that building. Of course, they don't have the big metal jail cells, not like this one does, but that might be an interesting thing, how they did that with county ownership.
I think our biggest question is, I think we just need a plan, because we're kind of confused about where everyone is on this. Are we gonna tear it down? Do we put the deadline? That's, you know, what's happening then, I think it's December 31st.
And we-
So we just need a plan on how you want us to proceed, or whatever group works on this.
And one of the things we said about the 31st date is if somebody had an idea that they were coming forth, we would gladly move the date out. It's just that it was standing with nothing. Nobody really interested, and it's like, we just can't let it sit without any kind of decision. We're done on it.
And I think, you know, like Judy's making a point too, that, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, we want to do something with it, and then 30 years from now, it's like, oh, well, we haven't done anything with it, you know, and it's like, okay, well, now we've put the money into maintaining it, to keeping it at a level that, you know, is mothballed. Well, all that money's now gone for nothing, you know, so I mean, it's
Yeah,
what,
you would
where do you
only-
put that sunset date of, we've tried, nobody's come forward, what do you do, you know, I mean, that's just where we're coming from, that we'd gladly be open to suggestions. Yeah, it does, and that's part of the thing is, you know, we've got the insurance money that we can drag out, but when all of a sudden that's gone, now you don't have the insurance money to help rehabilitate. You know, you're bleeding slowly. Right. So, yeah, what is that?
That's why we have a deadline.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's the position why that date was put together.
Well, again, we'd be happy to, you know, continue the discussion. I don't know if Shar is the best person to work through. I know I had chatted with Tess when we came down here last year, who the best contact person is for the county and our office, and we can certainly reach out to the County Historical Society. We have staff who work
I
with
think
them
that if you keep
regularly.
Shar in the loop, since she
Yeah.
clerks for us, whatever information she gets processes
Falls to us.
through us, and then share tests in on it also, so
The
it's a.
Historical Society would like to be
Yeah, and the
in the
Historical
loop.
Well,
Society.
and even just putting, you can just have a group email that it naturally goes to Tessa, the
Everybody.
Historic Society, and Shar, and just, then everybody's on the same page.
Right.
I think that's important to get some conversation really going, and some ideas really starting to flow.
Yeah, I agree.
Barb?
I plan on, I'm already registered for the SHPO conference in Little Falls.
Great.
And there are numerous things going on there. And I'd be happy to give somebody a ride up and share a room if somebody else wants to go. Because it's worthwhile going to. It's a very reasonably priced. It's only $90 if you're a member.
And that's a great conference to, again, people from all over the state coming in and having similar, very similar situations that they have to this one.
What is that again?
Either they're in it right now, or they've already,
September 16th,
17th and 18th in Little Falls.
Of July or
September.
August?
September.
September?
What's the name of the conference?
It's Preserve Minnesota. It's
Okay.
our preservation conference, statewide conference.
Any more questions? I think we're tapped out.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much
thanks
for
for
having
coming
us.
down.
Thank you.
Thank you
for inviting
Thanks
us.
for coming.
It's always such an attractive place.
Oh,
It's
I
nice
love
to
it.
come down here.
Beautiful down here.
Hey, real quick, one last question. Preserve Minnesota, is that just buildings, or does that deal with land and stuff too?
I'm sorry.
Preserve Minnesota, is that dealing with like land issues too? Like, like you got like Indian mounds, burial mounds, things
It
like
is archaeology, so there.
So it encompasses
It
land
does,
uses as
everything
well?
from buildings, landscapes, campuses,
Okay.
historic, cultural,
Yeah.
any kind of cultural, archaeological sites.
And we're
Sure.
just now starting to address landscapes. I mean, for the longest time, there was, buildings and sites, and we're just now starting to think about landscapes and how do we think about these?
Right.
At this year's conference, we're also partnering with, we're bringing in a lot of the county historical society. It used to be basically preservation-based, but we're bringing in state archives, experts, and museum people into this conference, so it's a good merge.
The only reason I even brought that up was, the whole Driftless region has become such a big thing that it's kind of a unique topography to try and preserve and maintain. Has been kind of a hot thing. I was just curious if that was involved in that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Carol? And Donna, okay.
So I emailed out the financial report through June 30th with the line item budget for each department. We could go through those line by line, but I think it would be safe to say that each department probably has a little nuance where we might need to make a budget amendment, or because we got a new revenue source, or there was an unexpected expenditure coming out. So, well, there are some departments that I have to meet with regarding items like that. In the general, the 003 account, there's a couple accounts that have really high percentages because it's our Affordable Care Act, our temporary reinsurance payment that we had to make, which actually we got our escrow amount from the Southeast Service Co-op, so we have that money in there. Haven't paid it all out, but we're going to have to make another payment for that, and we're not going to get escrow money this year. So we'll have to take a look at that and see where we're going to come out, how much we're probably going to need to rebudget. There's just items like in the treasurer's office, the temporary employees, because Mary worked over there. We don't know if that may happen again throughout the year, so we'll wait until the end to transfer that money from the recorder's budget to Donna's. Like I said, each department has certain items that they look funny right now, but is it material enough to worry about a budget amendment? Or, so we'll review those through the end of the year. Probably the biggest item is that our cash balance has pretty much been restored to our beginning of the year balance, even without our state paid aids, which come in July. So that's good on that end. The bottom line of the county general revenue budget is we're at 48% of our revenues and 49% of our expenditures. So that's a good show. Highway Department has gotten in project funds, so their revenue is considerably more than their expenditures. Human Services is 43% revenue and 45% of expenditures. So
So
each
we're
one is a
staying
little
within
below the 50% of the year, and they are on the reimbursement cycle, so some of that will be coming in. The debt service, we've made all of our payments now. You approved, I guess I'm assuming you will be approving our payment for August, that's due in August for our final 2015 payment. So I put together the summary sheet for each of the bonds, which is on the back side, so you can see how those payments were distributed so that our total payment for the years would stay consistent. The front side shows what we've paid to date on the bonds, principal and interest, the future payments, and then the remaining balance. The column on the left shows the remaining balance at the year end. So at the end of 2015, we have a principal balance of $15,980,000, interest to be paid of $5,475,000, and so the total is that we still owe is $21,455,896 on those bonds. And they just our last payments will be in 2030. Well, actually 2031, but we won't have to levy for that payment. Because we're required to levy 105% of our annual payments, so by the time we get to that last year, we'll have levied enough money already to make that final payment. So that kind of gives a breakdown of those.
So literally the county gave $10 million to borrow 17. Is what that, if I'm reading that right?
$8,580,791 over on here, the total payments.
Oh, yeah. That's what they, because then that plus that equals 26, right?
Right.
So, yeah, 8.5 million,
Yes. So that's that sheet. I don't know if there's anything on the financial reports that you had questions about. Comments?
No.
Okay. So we need to start budgeting for 2016.
Set up some,
We have, the levy has to be, preliminary levy has to be adopted by September 30th. Got that right this year, instead of doing that early. But there isn't a meeting on the September 29th because it's the 5th Tuesday. So we would need to plan on adopting the preliminary levy and budget on the 22nd. I think I have that right, Shar. So the budget worksheets will be distributed probably next week. We'll have them come in mid-August to the third week of August, and then maybe the first week in September, or first and second weeks in September, to do budget reviews, if that works with your schedules, if you don't have other things.
Are there any changes that we're aware of already, or?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I haven't heard any.
I mean, as far as funding from other sources or anything, nothing in the last legislation got cut. That'll affect us.
I guess Human Services, I really couldn't say. I know there is additional funding for the social workers, the child protection. I don't know if any of their other percentages went up on the reimbursements, but probably not much. I haven't heard that they've lost any either.
Have you heard a lot about transportation?
No.
Okay.
I let Brian address transportation
Right.
issues and funding, because there's so many different ways that they can do that, requesting the funding. I know Sheila requests the funding as soon as possible after a project's been approved, so we have that money to pay right away, which is why they have that, their cash balance increased, because we've received a lot of the money from the projects that they're going to be paying for later this year.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, as far as the treasurer's side of it, the full cash, I have sheets here, the actual ending cash as of June 30th, 15 was $15,155,621. And nothing has really changed much on the investment side. There's not a lot of things coming due right now at this time, but I did manage to get $1 million of our cash into the money market fund, which is on the back page here. It's Iceland State Bank. It's in green. So it's our money market is $4,254,641.73, and that is, liquid cash, ready for anything, as well as any of the other accounts that are above here, listed for the Bank of the West. That's all liquid as well. For the most part, of course, the first one there in the green, that's our main cash book balance. This $846,146.49. That's our main cash account that the money comes out of every day. So, other than that, nothing has really changed much, and I'm just kind of more or less, waiting to hear. I'm kind of keeping my money really liquid, and if something comes due, I will be cashing it in and putting it into. I don't know how much more I can get into the ISA money market, but the money markets at the Bank of the West, they're only paying 0.01%, so I'm not going to be getting any money on that. So the sooner the better. We find out what we're going to do. I don't want to really invest anything again now for 3 or 5 years until we decide, what's going to happen. So that's all I can say is I'm just kind of sitting, waiting now to hear more. But this sheet here is the fund investments, and nothing has changed much on there except for if something does come due on the fund investment side, I do reinvest it because, except for the highway department, I did put that their CD into their money market account, so that's liquid as well. They're the first section on this top of the page here. They have $1,493,600 in their investment account for road and bridge. The only thing that would be tied up for that would be the 3 securities from Multibank on the very top, equaling $297,000. Otherwise, the rest of it is all liquid. I shouldn't say that. No, the Iceland Bank CDs are to come due like November 2020 and March 23rd, 2017. So that's what they have. The Human Services had a certificate, 2 certificates coming due, and I reinvested that into Multibank at 2.25%. So I just combined the 2 together. So as far as that goes, we have that reinvested, but the other, like as far as general revenue certificates, I'm just going to go ahead and cash those in. So is there any questions on that?
Donna, real quick, if we wanted to write a check today, how much money do we have that's not going to bounce, that's not going to...
It's not going to bounce?
That's, that you'd feel safe, that's not going to leave us shorthanded. What's that number?
I would safely say to go to the back, to the second sheet here, or the back of this big sheet, and look at that special account again. That account is our liquid money that you could take right now today and use it. And we'd still be okay because I'd have other cash there above that to use right now. So the 4 million, you know, I wouldn't want to take it all, but you know, you don't want to use it all, but you could use a good portion of that today.
So where are you looking? You're
Thank
thinking
you.
back
Yeah,
on
The
this
big
one?
long
One
one.
back, yeah,
It's
this
a
one here.
special account.
It's the
4
special
million.
account,
4,200,000.
4 million.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
special account.
yeah.
Okay,
And right now, we're getting 1% interest on that at 8 cents.
okay.
That's a liquid account, it's a special account. I
So
never
that's
use it.
accessible at any time if we need it.
Yeah, you can cash it in anytime you want, it's all liquid money.
Gotcha, okay. Carol, how's everything else looking?
Yeah, it looks okay. I gave you the fund balance a couple weeks ago, where we are maintaining what we need to. That's in the general fund. I haven't heard from Road and Bridge and Human Services on how they would allocate theirs, but that part of it looks okay.
I did want to make one other comment, I'm sorry, on the back of the sheet, the total investments, see like it's got Multi-Bank, Raymond James, Wells Fargo, okay, those are all my extra investments in addition to my cash that, and as you notice, the Eitzen Bank special account is listed there as well. So basically, $10 million is invested right now. And I think we've kind of gone through this before, but a lot of that, well, how much would you say? I think we figured about 6 million probably basically belongs to Road and Bridge, but I've got invested in general revenue. So the 10 million is a larger figure than it usually is. Usually it's only about 2-3 million, but because of Road and Bridge's extra fund balance, I've used that to invest, and it's actually in the county revenue, so.
Well, it's in the account, and
it's in- yeah,
general
it's-
revenue is getting the interest
Yeah,
on it
getting
as
interest
opposed to
instead of
Road and Bridge.
Which, if you'd ask the auditors, they'd say it doesn't matter. You know, the money for the county is the county's money. So they would probably say, you know, in fact, they think I'm totally crazy having these separate fund investments. And we've talked about this before too, just getting rid of these and putting them all together with the general fund. But
And what we would have to do
you know.
there is that Road and Bridge and Human Services do budget an amount of interest income. So if we were going to take all of those investments and actually move them to just be general investments, we would most likely, well, it would be the best thing to do is to increase their levy by the amount of interest they were losing. Because they do have actually, you know, they're kind of getting shorted because we still make them levy and don't give them all their interest. So we would probably make an adjustment that way if we decided we wanted to just let Donna account for all of it in the general account.
So what's the limitations for the county's ability to invest? What can you and can you not invest in? Like, I mean, are there ways you can invest more aggressively, or is it kind of like, you can only pretty much put it in a
you can
low
only
interest
put them
savings
in
account?
certificates of deposit or backed by government securities. So like all of these are basically certificates of deposit and or backed by government securities. So I have to go through a broker who, they have all the restrictions for the county. And I can't just go and invest in like mutual funds or anything.
You can just put it in the stock market and say, I
Right,
hope
no.
we make money. Yeah.
No. No, it has to be very, 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 very safe.
Carol would be hyperventilating every
And-
day.
A paper bag.
And nobody, I mean, a lot of the counties around, and even the brokers have a hard time believing I'm still getting 1% on my money market accounts, which is very, very good right now. So we've got to be thankful for that, because that's really helping a lot.
And that's the local bank.
Mhm.
I don't know how they can do that.
I know.
But they're a small local bank, but they pay.
They have a competitor over the hill. that-
Hopefully our
Well, that's
borrowing
true, but
out-
we can't go there.
I know.
We can't go to the
But that's
competitor
one of the
over the
reasons.
state
Okay.
line,
Iowa.
across the state line.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But like I said again, a lot of counties have gone to putting all their funds all together, so, you know, like I know when Carol talks about the Road Bridge kind of missing out on the interest, and they'd have to levy more, then other places, you know, it would just even itself out within the county, but, you know, so you can look at it different ways, but we'd have to, like, if we were gonna make the change, we'd have to do it for sure at the beginning of the year, so we could the road bridge could, and all of the other investment accounts, or all the other fund investments could keep that in mind when they do their budget, they won't be getting their interest. So, but that's something that the board can decide. For right now, I'm fine with it. I've gotten a system down now, so it's not a big deal, but in the future, if you guys ever want to decide to combine it, that's fine. Just let me know.
But they don't budget that much for it either, so.
No, it's not, the interest rates have gone down so much. In the past, I'm sure it was really a huge, huge difference for them, but for right now, it doesn't amount to whole, not a lot, so.
So there really isn't an advantage to put them all in under one account, general. I mean,
Well,
it's almost better
It
to
would
keep.
probably just give a more accurate picture of the investment, because if you look at Road and Bridge, they have $8 million, and they've only invested $1 million of it. It doesn't really look like we're, on the trial balance report, it doesn't look like maybe we're investing the way we should be.
Okay.
So if we just had theirs as a pooled cash balance, it would probably be more reflective of what actually happens.
Okay.
From my perspective, I think it would be a lot easier to invest the money because I'd have more to invest, and it'd be easier for me to look at it. I wouldn't have to worry about, am I cheating, Road and Bridge, am I cheating Human Services, or whatever. And I think you could do maybe a little bit better job investing, especially when the rates are a little higher. But right now, it's not such a big deal, but when the rates do get higher, I think you could definitely have an advantage if you had all the money together.
And staggered maturities have their advantage though too, you're always, constantly having something maturing and being able to, let's say, grab a higher rate if
Right.
it ever gets that way. But there's some benefit to having separate investments.
Yeah, it's,
But it would really just actually be a journal entry in the financial system, moving their money to cash. We could do it. It's not like we would have to cash all those investments to get this change into place. It would be through entries in the financial system.
Right. And then as they come due, you shove them into the pool cash. So, something to think about.
Sounds good. So we're setting up budget meetings the end of August to be done. We have to be done by the 22nd of September. Usually in August, we start meeting with the departments.
Right. And
You want to choose some dates now?
I think that's probably it.
Sure could.
which day?
Did some of the departments go in so we can go through their budgets?
August 18th, is that too soon?
I'd go then next week.
We have department heads that day in the afternoon. Or you want to try to do them during the board meeting?
We could probably. What was the date on the other one?
The 18th. I'm
18th?
thinking we could start. I could have mine done by then, I think. Do some of the smaller ones, the 18th, then the 25th. Like I said, department heads in the afternoon, but
Do what we can done anyway.
Yeah.
We're going, yes, because we're going to need.
and then we've got a couple weeks in September finalized.
We'll,
18th.
we'll see who gets theirs in, and that's who we'll schedule for the 18th.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll start budget meetings the 18th of August.
Yep.
Hmm?
Kind of go from there and schedule as you get them in?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else? Back to work.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Tess, she got,
We want to finish our other business.
we,
and then-
okay,
Yeah.
and go into, yeah, we'll probably do that. Agenda, okay. Has everyone seen the claims, Human Services and License Centers, disbursements? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve claims, Human Services and License Center disbursements.
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. That's carried. We need to amend the minutes from the December 30th, 14 minutes.
Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. Last week in negotiations, Dana and I were in negotiations, and something was brought up about a motion that was made at our December 30th meeting, and that I had seconded it. And I knew I hadn't seconded it because I was the only one who voted against it. And so I went back and I looked at the videotape, and it was Justin who seconded it, not me, and so I'd like that correction made in the minutes.
They got the J right.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a motion to.
Okay. Discussion? Or wait a minute, do you have, did we get a second?
Did we get?
I'm sitting here looking at something
I'll
else.
second that, that's fine.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Thank
That is
you.
carried.
Dana, you knew that was gonna bug me, didn't you?
Okay, gambling
Yeah.
permit, Sheldon Valley Sportsman's Association.
The township had signed off on this, so I see no reason not to approve it.
What township was it again?
Sheldon.
Sheldon, yeah, it must be
Sheldon
Sheldon.
Valley Sportsman's Association.
It looks like tip words and a raffle. Anybody have any objections?
Motion to approve the gambling permit.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, closed session? Tess?
Did I see her at the
She's
back?
in the door a minute ago.
Any idea how long that'll take?
Cass, any idea how long the closed session will go?
Half hour,
We're ready for you. Come on in.
possibly a little sooner.
Somebody care to move to go into closed session?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Yes, do you expect a vote afterwards?
We may have a vote.
And are you gonna re-engage about the commissioner reports at that point? or-
Yes.
So we're going into closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D03 Subdivision 1B to discuss labor negotiations. We'll try to be fast.
I'll make a motion to come out of closed session.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are back in session.
We're back in open session.
So we were in closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03 Subdivision 1B. And we discussed 3 different labor units. And at this time,
I'd like to make a motion to ratify the contract as stated with the MAPE employees in the handout that we received today.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
So we're approving the contract as stated, is that what we're?
With changes.
With the changes.
With the changes in it.
which include, just for clarification, COLAs of 2, 2.5, and 3% for 215, 216, 217 respectively, plus the language changes that are reflected in here in the document.
Just for clarification, for everybody else out there, I will follow suit to what I have currently done on all of them. I don't want this anybody to think that my voting no means I don't agree with the changes and think some of the changes are good, but I disagree with some of the pay and some of the things that are in there, therefore it'll be a no. I clarify that it's kind of a sticky one, that I'm not voting against the changes, because I think some of the changes are good.
Some of the language changes you don't take issue with,
That's
Commissioner,
correct.
I understand.
Yep, just for clarification.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries, 1 nay.
Thank you very much for your time today, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tess.
You're welcome.
And Judy and Dana for all your work on it.
Yeah. Patient people. Commissioner reports. Judy.
At committee meeting this morning, the sheriff's department asked that we bring up a few things. One of them is that on the webpage now, there's a list of all the people who are housed in the jail. You can go to it any time and see who's in custody. And it also tells, it'll say hold for another agency. That means that a different county is paying us. And so far this year, Winona County has paid us $60,709. And Fillmore County, to this point, there's still some claims that'll still be made to them, but we're at $4,850. We have a pretty full facility, as you can tell by this printout, and it's also interesting to see how many people are from other counties that they're paying us, and it's not costing us money, so it helps to support the costs of the jail.
How many inmates do we have right now?
29, I think, for period 29.
Is that on our county website?
Yes.
I don't like, was it La Crosse County that did that, or what? I know some friends might have made a comment about that one time, that, oh, he's in La Crosse County. I was like, oh, so I guess everybody's
Yeah,
doing
and
it
they
now.
want to be very open. If you're in custody, it's public knowledge.
Be careful.
Be careful.
Anything that you wanted to add to that, Sam?
Well, I guess one thing I think I've said in the past is that the reason that you're getting this influx of people here is because Mark Schultz is able to balance this level of, sometimes when we had an older jail, you had this high level of service just because you needed to it, because you had, by design, you had so much contact with people, and you just had to have that. And sometimes you would see where you went to a facility that's more like, more correctional, more prison-like, if you will. And Mark has been able to balance that, where you have this high level of service, and then but yet you still have the correctional setting. And it seems to me, it's my understanding, is that one of the reasons we're getting this, the people down here, is because professionals that have to deal with people who are incarcerated it's easy to contact them, the people are being treated well, and because oftentimes it's, friends, family members, people don't know, because people in our community that are serving, unfortunately, some time in jail, it's not too many people that are there go to prison out of it. And so I think that's why you're seeing this here, is because of Mark's professionalism and his staff, as well as why we're getting the people here, coming from Winona and other counties.
Thank you. The rest of my report is on our EDA meeting last week. We have a business interested in some help financing that's expanding a business in Caledonia, and another business that's looking at purchasing another business and reopening it. That's just located in the county, and they're preliminary yet, but it's really showing that, we've got these people that want to develop. We also have the one who's looking for 4 to 5 acres to bring a business here. And I didn't understand why they were picking us over all the other places, but the owners are located, one in Decorah and one in La Crosse. So this is the middle ground, but if we can't help them here to become located, they're just going to move on to another area.
Another community, probably.
Yeah, and probably not in our county. So I just think, the work that the EDA does in
It's
Houston
starting
County
to
is
show.
really
We're
important.
doing good work.
Get some results.
Oh, this is an EDA question I've heard from some people, and some of the discussion came up last night too. As far as Caledonia, and Steve, you'll answer this, are there a lot of areas for businesses to come in and build on or expand to?
No, that's what I've seen. The industrial park is, I guess, for the most part, full. There is a corner lot, but it's not very big. And beyond Joe Root Trucking, I guess it really, everything slopes.
Yeah.
So that there isn't a real desirable spot out that way. So there is a need, I guess, for commercial development, maybe some industrial, I don't know.
And I think it's good that what we're doing is supporting expansion where they're at too, and purchasing a place that's empty and not a business now, you know, to help rejuvenate some business that's gone out.
Are you talking about the one that they're
Veteran.
taking down to rebuild, or?
No.
Oh,
No, there's one, and I don't know how,
Public it is.
I don't
yeah.
know how public the information is. You'd have to check with the EDA person
Yeah.
before
Yep.
I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
I think we should be a little,
Yes.
Yeah,
we know,
Fair.
some of it's not.
yeah, it's not finalized. We're in the preliminary part of where they're talking to us and then going to our subcommittees to
Gotcha.
find out. But as soon as we know something that we can for sure say, we will definitely say, because it's so good for the county.
Mhm.
Did it?
Mhm.
Meetings, Justin? And do you want to take up your comments after we've finished?
I'm fine. We basically met with the city council last night. They just had some questions or concerns on where the county was at with the highway department building. And they were just wanted to know where the time frame was, and if they were going to have any opportunity to voice their opinion, just because of obviously it's in the city limits and it affects them and stuff like that. So it's a good conversation. Obviously they don't. It doesn't seem like they really lean one way or the other. They just have concerns and they just want to make sure that they're heard. And I said, yeah, and you will be. So that was pretty much the big meeting.
I had had a very busy week with spending most of it up in Rochester with family illnesses at Mayo. But I did have a special meeting I went to at La Crescent Township last night because they did approve the amendment to the zoning ordinance for floodplain compliance with FEMA, so that they would be covered in case of any kind of disasters. I think we had to do it because we have our own zoning in La Crescent. But I know it's been, I think Judy went to the emergency management meeting here. The cities all have to also do that. But Township did do it last night. So that was the only other meeting I had.
Dana?
I also attended an EDA meeting with Judy and also negotiations last Tuesdays. There's been a lot of meetings, but that's all I cared to report about.
Okay. I don't have my calendar with me, but I don't think I had any out meetings of any kind. No SimCAC this month. So, okay, Justin, you want to take up where you left off?
I don't even remember where I left off, to be honest with you.
I
To
guess-
be honest, I'll keep it very simple. The big thing, I just want to make sure that the public and some of the other organizations in the area that would be affected are going to have a platform to voice their opinion. That's my biggest concern.
But I'd like to say that I think that design and what it needs to be, I think, should be left to us as a deciding board. Yeah, you can open up to the public, I guess, but they're for the most part pretty much uninformed as to what is needed.
Well,
and I don't mind a public meeting at all. I just want a plan out there first. And I'm still looking at sites, different sites. We don't have a building permit even. I think we're still early, but we're moving somewhere. We're moving forward with something. I looked at a highway or a property on Highway 44. No city water and sewer. That would be expensive. I'm looking at additional land at the current site, and that's still a little bit in the air yet.
Sure. So, and my only other thing is I just want to make sure that we're going down the road in the right manners. I don't want to all of a sudden put all the time into this direction and then it gets shifted over back to this direction and say, oh, that was a waste of time and money. So as long as everybody's cognizant that let's make sure that we're doing things in the right steps and people have an opportunity to be heard. Fine. That's as long as we're all on the same page there, which it sounds like we are.
Okay.
Hopefully. Okay, very good. Is there any further business to come before this meeting? Not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
seconded. Anyone?
I'll second it.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. And opposed, nay. And you're carried. We are